The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark. I'm from Sunrise Systems. I'm going to be the person today giving this webinar on the Artemis system. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go through real quick. Everybody should see a PowerPoint presentation right now being displayed on the screen, and we're going to start in a few minutes here. We do have a full house today. Out of the 100 seat capacity, we actually have 100 people that registered for today's seminar, so I'm excited about that. We do have a lot to go over today. We will probably take the full hour and a half that we've designated for this webinar. But a couple of things as we go through. Everybody is in mute mode, so I cannot hear you directly. It's to keep the noise level down. There is in the webinar pane on the right-hand side that you have, there is a red arrow at the very top where you can minimize that pane in case you can't see the right part of the screen as I'm going through some of the screenshots here. But also in that pane there is a section called questions. I would ask that if you have any questions as we go along in today's webinar that you type your questions in there, and I will stop periodically to answer those questions. If you need to chat directly to myself or the audience, there is a chat function at the bottom as well too. I will be reviewing that as well also as we go through today's webinar. So I see right now out of 100 people that have registered, we have about 73 that are online, so I'll give them a few more seconds to add a few more people before we actually get in and start. But just so I know everybody can hear me fine, would the following people, I'll just go away from the top of the list real quick, just respond okay in the chat section that you can hear me. Amanda, Amy, Angela, Anthony, Barbara. So that's one of your names. Just respond okay in the chat section just so I know that everybody can hear me fine. Today's broadcast or webinar is being recorded. We will at some point in time be putting these up on YouTube. So if you or any other people within your organization need to go back and review anything at any point in time, you'll be able to go back and kind of go through this webinar again. We also do have training videos up on the website as well too. That again, so pretty much what I'm going to go over today through all the items, we do have training webinars there as well also. So let me see real quick here. Let's just take a look here. Yep. Okay. Good. So people can hear me fine. I just want to make sure because there are times that the audio does cut out. If anybody at any point during today's webinar has a problem hearing me or seeing your screen, sometimes it's just better to just relaunch the webinar and come back in or dial back in. Generally, it's usually something on your end that might be causing the problem. If I do get a lot of questions or chats where a lot of people can't hear me, then I'll actually maybe just restart the webinar, but I've been pretty good with not having to do that. So let me just jump in here real quick. Okay, good. Okay, so let me go back to, I'm going to go through this quick PowerPoint that I had running here real quick just so everybody can kind of see what's going on here. So let me just make sure everybody sees my application here. Okay, so there we go. So let me just kind of go through here a couple of facts about the Artemis system. Artemis originally launched in 2009 for mainly New Jersey counties and municipal agencies. This was originally funded by, at the time, Paris grants. So if you're familiar with the Paris grants at the time, this was all funded initially at that point in time. The original thought process was that eventually after the counties and municipal agencies were first launched in 2009, in 2010, 2011, we would have launched the state agencies and the Board of Education. Unfortunately, the Paris grant funding had gone away. So at the point in time, the state did not have a budget to extend the Artemis system. Glad to say that this last year they were able to find funding. We were able to do the additional programming, and starting as of June 1st of this year, we are going to be bringing on all state agencies and all Board of Education throughout the state into the system. Just to give you some other fun facts, currently right now, again, state agencies are new, so we only have 3 registered state agencies as we continue the rollout to them. But we do have 540 county agencies that are registered in the system. And just so everybody's aware, an agency is basically a department. So as you can imagine, in each county there are multiple departments. So that's why we have a total of 540 agencies registered at the county level. At the municipal level, we have, well over 5,000 agencies that are registered. And so far, we have one Board of Education that registered, even though the system for you to actually officially get in will be available next week. We're anticipating August 1st, or probably next Monday is August 3rd, that you'll be able to actually go in and start registering. We're still just finishing up a couple of things within the system. We do have over 4,000 registered users in the system that have been registered within the system and have used the system. And since the launch in 2008, we have, or the state has received over 28,000 disposition requests electronically. For today's agenda, basically these are the items that I'm going to go through today. I'll try to work through this agenda. We're going to review the system requirements and the setup. We're going to talk about how to register as a records manager for your organization, how to access the Artemis system, both logging in with your username and password, and then if you forget your password, how to retrieve that password. We'll review the layout of the home screen when you first log in. We'll talk about how to create and update agencies, how to create and disable users, and the types of roles that are available. And then we'll talk about, how do we search and review the RMS retention schedules and record series numbers, how to determine which records within an organization are due for disposition according to guidelines, how to create and process a disposition request, how to process that disposition request, getting your wet signatures, and then how we complete the final status and other items, the complete process from start to finish. So again, there's a lot to go over through today. I don't expect everybody to remember everything I go through today. That's why we do have the training videos, and this webinar will be posted again on YouTube at some point within the next week or two. An email will go out after we've done all the training webinars, and then we'll post those out online. A couple other things. In your panel on the right-hand side where I had mentioned earlier about asking questions in the question section there, there is also a place called handouts. There are two handouts that I posted in there. One is the training agenda that we just kind of went over here. The other one is a user information setup sheet. And let me just show you that real quick. Let me just open that real quick so I can go over that. Should have that open already, but let me open that, launch that. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. And let me do this. Okay, so let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so let me go over kind of what I call some of the system requirements and things you'll need to utilize for the system. For recommended computer and hardware specifications, we recommend that you use Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, or 8.1, either 32 or 64-bit mode. There might be some individuals out there that are still running Windows XP. The system will run in Windows XP. Technically, since Microsoft no longer supports Windows XP, it's not something that we put on our list because it's not a supported product by Microsoft anymore. But if you do have Windows XP, the system should still operate within Windows XP for the people out there, just as an FYI. The system works only in Internet Explorer. Okay, it will not work with Google Chrome, Apple Safari, and Mozilla Firefox. The reason for that is we are a Microsoft Gold partner. We do all our development in Microsoft.NET framework. So again, it works best in Internet Explorer. Can you get the system to come up in those other browsers? Yes, but there's going to be certain functionality that will not work correctly in those other browsers. So again, we specify, make sure you're using Internet Explorer, and we support, again, version 9 and above. Anything below version 9 is no longer supported by Microsoft. Not to say it won't work, it's just, again, it's not technically supported, so we can't really provide support on anything below version 9. We ask that you have Adobe Acrobat Reader or some other PDF reader, because there are certain times within the system we will open documents or items as PDFs. So again, you need to either have Adobe Reader, PDF Reader, or some other compatible PDF reader within your system. You will also need at some point in time a Twain compatible scanner. Will enable you to scan your signed disposition requests and upload them into the system. Now, I know most organizations have at least a multifunction copier scanner. Those copier scanners will be able to all usually Twain compliant, so they'll be able to scan your disposition requests on those devices and then upload them into the system. I do provide a link here to the live system. So again, that's going to be the URL. It's a web-based system for you to get into the system. There's also a link in that document to go to the training videos, which again are on YouTube. If you do go out to YouTube and you do a search for Artemis, you should also be able to find those training videos out there as well too. When we get to the point where you need to scan in your signed disposition form back into the system, there is particular format that the state mandates that scanned image gets put back into. Now, as I mentioned a little while ago, most organizations use a multifunction copier scanner to scan their stuff, and usually those machines by default are set to PDF mode. You will have to scan these disposition forms in what we call a TIFF file format. All those copiers do have the ability to scan in that format. You'll just, when you're in your scan settings, you'll just have to switch that format from PDF to TIFF temporarily while you do that scan. Your color mode needs to be in black and white. Okay, so make sure that when you're scanning, you pick black and white. And your resolution needs to be at 300 dpi, dots per inch. Okay, so as you're doing your scans of those disposition forms, that's the format and the settings that you need to set on your copiers or your scanners in order to do that. There are some, I listed some additional troubleshooting steps down at the bottom. Because this system works in a lot of different types of environments, and I mean different types of networking environments. Different IT departments have different security rules in place, different fire port rules and all that. So if you have trouble utilizing the system at any point in time, what we recommend is go through these couple of 3 items, troubleshooting tips at the bottom to update your browser settings. You might need to just do one of the items. You might need to do all 3. Okay, it doesn't hurt to do them. It's not going to affect your browser at all. But if you're having problems with the system, what I would recommend is that you just go into that troubleshooting step section and just add those functions to your browser settings. And typically that resolves 99% of the issues and so on and so forth. So again, that's that. And again, these handouts or these documents could be downloaded. If you go to the handout section on the right-hand side in your panel, you'll see a section called handouts. There are 2 there. I believe you just have to either right-click on there or drag and drop to your desktop, and you can pull those documents over. If anybody is having any trouble getting those documents, at the end of the webinar today, I will post my email address in the chat area. Feel free to just email me, and I will send you those documents via email if you cannot download them. So that takes us through the system requirements and the setup. So let me get out of this screen here real quick. Let me get over to the Artemis main screen. Let's make sure we are here. Okay, very good. So let me just check if there's any questions here real quick. Let's see here, going through my panel. Okay, I don't see any questions. Bear with me one second. I'm trying to see if anything's coming up here. Okay, I don't see anything coming up right now. So again, if you have a question or if you can't ask your question in the question section, you can definitely put it in the chat section as well too. Either one I will go through and I will get to those questions as they come up. Okay, so we're going to go over right now is how to register as what we call a records manager. And we refer to a records manager in the system as basically the administrator for your organization. This person will basically have all the rights to manage the system within your organization. They'll be able to set up what we call new agencies, which we'll go over in a few minutes. Set up new users, same thing, we'll talk about how to set up new users, and manage those users within the organization. We recommend that you have at least 2 records managers within your organization. And the reason for that, obviously, if it's, you know, the first person is on vacation, out sick, or whatever, at least there's a backup to do that. I wouldn't go crazy and make everybody a records manager. I would probably have 2 or 3 people, typically like a backup person, maybe an IT person as that records manager, and then everybody else will get set up as what we call a multi-agency user within the system. So again, just to give you that, we'll do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to register as a records manager. Once you get to this login page of Artemis, you're going to see a link here down below. It says New Agencies Register here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on that link. And as we click on that link and the new screen comes up, we'll give it a second here to respond. Bear with me one second. My internet's running a little bit slow this morning. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here, even though it's a little bit out of order, and I apologize for that, but it's something that's not done all the time when people register, is right here where it says, are you the records manager for your organization? Well, actually, sorry, let me go back up. Let me pick the organization type first. Organization type, what we want to pick, it's going to be defaulted to state agency because that's the top level agency. So the first thing we want to do is pick Board of Education, okay? From there, what you'll do is after you pick Board of Education, what you'll have is to the right here is you'll have a drop down that says county, and what you'll do is you'll go down to your specific county. Today I'm going to pick Camden County as my county. And then for the municipality or Board of Education, again, we're going to pick which Board of Education we're registering for. Today I'm going to pick Cherry Hill Township is going to be my Board of Ed. Now what we're going to do is here where it says, are you the records manager for your organization? What you're going to do is you're going to answer yes. Okay. When you do that, over to the right where it says agency, you don't have to worry about that. It's going to be grayed out. But what you want to do, which is very important, is that you register as the records manager for your organization by clicking on yes. If you do not do that, you click no and then pick a specific agency here, you'll only be registered as a regular user within the system. You will not, and we will not have access to be able to manage the system. So it's very important when you register to come here and answer yes. In the next section is going to be the primary, what we call primary user information, and this is basically going to be your information that you put in. So I'm just going to type here a user that I have set up here. Now, for login name, what you need to do is you need to pick a login name for the system, following the guidelines. Your login name must be between 6 and 15 characters in length. Now, most people typically will use their first initial last name. That's fine. What I will caution you is just remember, as I mentioned before, the system has been in place since 2009, and we have over 4,000 registered users within the system. If you have a common name like John Smith and you try to use J. Smith as your login name, most likely J. Smith is already taken within the system. When we actually get down to the bottom and request our registration, if that username is already taken, the system will let you know. At that point in time, you'll just have to pick a new username. So just keep that in mind. But your username has to be between 6 and 15 characters in length. I'm going to put in my initials over here. Now, for password, okay, your passwords need to be at least 6 characters in length. We recommend that you use a combination of letters, numbers, special characters within your password. So as you're going through this, you can type in your password, okay, confirm your password on the right-hand side, and then also we ask you to pick a PIN number as well, too. And a PIN number typically is going to be 4 digits. You will utilize your PIN number later in the system as we go through the disposition process. So again, just pick a PIN number, typically 4 digits. Again, if that PIN number is used by somebody else, it's not going to not allow you to use it. So PIN numbers aren't unique, through the system. Passwords and PIN numbers are that login name. The only thing that's unique would be that login name. And then we'll put our phone number in here. So let me type. I'm just going to put my phone number and email address, right? So again, I'm going to use my email address, not this person that I'm setting up here. Okay. So I'm going to add my email address to the system. So again, that's the primary user information. Now, down below we have 2 other sections. We have an agency contact information section and we have a records manager information section. I believe at the Board of Education level, you're going to just use your name all the way down, in each one of these sections. Usually at the county and the municipal levels, this information can change from section to section. That's why we do have multiple sections there. But I would say at the Board of Education level, you could pretty much probably use your information down there as well, too. Some people might utilize, for example, if you wanted to use something different, like an agency contact information, maybe you put in your BA's information or whatever. But again, you can utilize the same information all the way down. This information can be changed later if need be. So just, if you don't have the correct information right now in the next two sections, you can always go back later on and you can update that information. To make it easy, if you want to copy down some of the information that we added above, if we just click on this checkbox here, okay, let me show you this here real quick, where it says copy primary user information, okay. Let me just move this here. Bear with me 1 second, because sometimes with my webinar here, I got to go like this, and do that. Okay, so I believe you should see, no, it's not working right now. Okay, so I have a message that comes up that says this action will allow me to copy the information. I'm going to just click on OK, and basically what it's going to do is the fields that match from section, this section above, will copy down. Now there are some other items that we need to enter in. Anything with a red asterisk is a required field, okay? So I'm just going to put in here my title. Okay. Email address pulled down, the address, I'm going to put just our company address here. And all the other information is the same. And then the last section at the bottom is the records manager information. Again, you can pull that information down by clicking either copying the primary user information or the contact. Either one you could select. I'm going to just do copy primary user information. Okay. What's going on here? Okay, that there. Bear with me 1 second here. Copy that. Okay, so I copied down that information down below. Now the last thing at the bottom is there are no terms and conditions that the state has set, but we do have a button here that says you're basically accepting the terms and conditions. Right now there are none, but you do have to click on the I accept checkbox at the very bottom. Okay, and then at the bottom we capture your electronic signature. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll type in your electronic signature, just type your full name there. Okay. And then at the very end here, what you're going to do is you're going to click on request registration. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And at this point in time, what happens is you're going to get a message that says your registration request has been sent to the state, and they're going to review this. Now, as soon as you register, you will not have access to the system immediately. The state has to approve your registration, and there's some reasons for that, just to make sure that people who aren't records managers are trying to register as a records manager and so on and so forth. So even though you have registered for the system, your user ID and password aren't active as of yet, okay? The state has to go in, they have to activate that, and once that's activated, an email will be sent back to you. And at that point in time, what you'll be able to do is then you'll be able to get into the system. So let me log in here because I'm going to activate that. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to pull up my email so you can kind of see. Bear with me here 1 second. I'm logging into 2 systems, so give me 1 second. Okay, so here you'll see that this is the email that was sent also to that email address that I registered, letting you know that you have successfully sent your registration to the state, and it's pending for them to approve. And then once the state approves, I'm logged into a different system here, so let me approve this request. So once the state approves, what you'll do is you will get an email back letting you know that your request has been approved, and at that point in time, you will be able to log into the system and be able to access the system, and here you go. Here's the second email, right? It says, you know, your registration has been reviewed and updated. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Let's go back here. There we go. There we go. So it says, congratulations, your agency has been successfully registered with the RMS eServices website. At this point in time, now to be able to go in and you'll be able to start setting up your items within the system. So again, the first time that you register, an email will confirm that your registration has been sent, and once the state has approved that registration, at that point in time, you'll get an email back that your registration has been approved at that point in time. So let me come back over here. I'm going to go back to the login page of Artemis. And I do see a couple of questions coming up, so I'll answer them in 2 seconds after I'm finished with this particular section right here. So one of the things real quick is, now I typically know that most organizations, when they're processing this disposition request, they typically do this generally once a year, most organizations. Some larger organizations will do this periodically throughout the year, but a lot of organizations typically process all their disposition requests once a year. If you forget at any point in time your password, okay, and you need to retrieve your password, we do have a forgot password link here, okay. What you'll need to do is you'll need to click on that link, okay. You'll need to put in the username that you registered for, and then you need to put in the email address that was registered with that item. When you do that and you put in the username and the email address and you click on Get Password, what's going to happen is the system is going to check the status of the system, and it's going to let you know that a password was sent to you via email. Now, you'll notice that I got an error message here. I did that on purpose. It tells me that the username provided is not valid. That's because I typed the name incorrectly. Okay, so this username and this email address combo do not match. If I change this, okay, and I hit Get Password, because everything is correct, I'll get a message in green that says an email has been sent to the email address provided above. So again, as you're working within the system, if there are any errors in any of the things that you're processing within the system, you'll usually get an error message in red. If the item or the task that you're doing throughout the system is successful, you'll generally get a message, and that message will be in green. Okay, so I just wanted to show everybody that I did just successfully send my email, right? And if I go back to my email here real quick, okay, we should see, and it lets me know that my password was sent successfully, you know, there within the system. So again, just wanted to show everybody that as we went through. I'm going to go back to the login page here before we log in, and I'm going to jump over to the question section real quick and see if some of the questions are here. So let me go through the questions real quick, answer them if I can, and we'll go from there. So the first question I have is the Artemis system accessible to agencies not on the Garden State Network? Stacy, I'm not really sure what you mean by the Garden State Network. You can elaborate further with another question. If not, at the end when I give my email address, you can email me or your contact information, and I can have either myself or somebody from the state call you. But I'm not understanding what the Garden State Network is. I apologize for that. The second question I have from Michael is password case sensitive? Yes, passwords are case sensitive. Usernames are not, but passwords are case sensitive within the system. Next question. How do you address access to New Jersey state authorities? New Jersey State DA is in Treasury with our own unique retention schedule. Again, Stacy, we'll have to talk about that. I'll need to know more about your organization to see how we deal with that. I'm not familiar with that offhand. It says, how do we register additional people for backup? We're going to get to that, Shelley, in a few minutes. I'll show you how you register additional people for the system once we log in. So just give me a few minutes, and we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes. And then the last question I have for right now, is the system ready to accept Board of Ed registration? I am unable to register. Terry, at this time, as I mentioned earlier, the system should be ready by next Monday. We are finishing up a few minor things within the system to get it set up. For the most part, everything is set up. We're just dealing with a few other, I would call independent Board of Eds in the system that just need to be kind of configured within the system first. But by the end of, or the start of next week, actually, you should be able to register within the system. Okay, so those are the questions I have so far right now. So let's continue. So now I'm back to the login page, right? I've registered my username and with the system. The state has confirmed or accepted my registration. Now I'm able to go in and now I'm able to log in. So let me log in here with my username and password. I will click on login. And this is going to take me to our home screen of Artemis. Give it a second here to catch up. Okay. So here we have the home screen of Artemis. What I'd like to do first is I'd like to go through the layout of the screen just so everybody understands the different functions on the screen. And again, this is kind of going to be the main screen that you're working in during the day. So I'm going to actually start in the very upper right-hand corner of the screen. And there's a couple of links up there. You're going to see a link that says Home, My Profile, Contact Us, Help, and FAQs. This home link, like I said, this is the home screen. If I ever find myself somewhere in the system, you got somewhere in the system, you don't know how you got there, you don't know what you clicked, if you just click on this home link right here, it will take you back out to this home page, and you can kind of start all over again. Real quick, easy, take you back out to the first page. The My Profile link, each user that's registered in the system can actually go in and update some of their information within the system, okay? Now, the one thing that they cannot change in the system once it's registered is the username, right? So my username that I selected here, which is A. Morgan, that's registered. I'm not able to change that. But the items below in the account information section, you can update or change, right? So let's say, you know, I'm a young woman. I eventually get married. My last name changes, and I want to change my last name from my maiden name now to my married name. I can come in here and I can change that. You can update your password. So if, you know, I know people are managing multiple passwords all the time. Sometimes they change their passwords throughout the different systems and they want to keep them the same. If you need to change or update your password, you can come in here. You can enter your new password, confirm the password, and then click Update User Profile. That will allow you to update your password, along with your PIN number as well, too. You can come in here and update your PIN number. Also, phone number, email address, user initials, all that information can be updated in this section. Make your changes, click on Update User Profile, and that change will take effect, and you should get a message in green that your user information has been accepted within the system. So again, that's the My Profile. The Contact Us link to the right is what I would suggest is if you're having any issues with the system, the first point of contact for system issues is the state, the RMS division, the DOORS division. You can contact them. The hotline number is actually on the login screen. So if you don't have their hotline number, it is on the login screen. Contact them first. If it's an issue that they cannot resolve, they will escalate that to us, and then we will be in contact with you to see what's going on and try to resolve your problem. So again, that's what the Contact Us link is there. You also have a help link here. We have an online help manual, okay? So it's a PDF manual. I forget how many pages it is, but again, if you know, for the people who like to read and want to go and tinker through the manual, there is an index in the front. It breaks down all the sections of the manual. I'm not going to open it now because it does take a few minutes to open up, you know, but by clicking on this link, that will open up the online help manual for you to go through. FAQs are more around system requirements. I went through the system requirements earlier. I have that separate sheet that you can go through and access. But again, that's kind of those system requirements. Below that, you should see the type of organization you are, Board of Education, obviously. What organization, your organization name here, as I registered before, I registered as Cherry Hill Township. You will see your username listed next to that, and then this is the main, what we call retention schedule that you're registered for to the right. You'll notice that there's a logout button here, okay? So there's a couple of different ways you can log out of the system or be logged out of the system. Obviously, the easy way is just to click on Logout, right? That'll log you out of the system. The second way is, since this is a browser-based system, okay, you can always just close your browser by clicking on the X in the upper right-hand corner. Close your browser. That will log you out of the system as well, too. But there is one way that you can be logged out or forced out of the system by the system, and that's if you're logged into the system and there's been no activity kind of detected by the system for a period of time. I think it's set for 2 hours is the activity threshold. But if you've logged into the system and you haven't worked in the system for a couple of hours, for security reasons, the system will automatically log you off at that point in time. All you'll need to do is just log back in. But I will caution you that if you're doing certain tasks within the system, if you've added certain line items to your disposition request and you have not saved those line items, those will be lost if the system automatically logs you out. So we'll talk about that when we go through disposition processing, how to save that work as you're going through that section. Moving over to the left-hand side of the screen, we have our menu items here, which are disposition management, retention schedule, system management, and reports. Okay. Now, we've also brought some of those items down into boxes or squares on the screen to make it a little bit easier for people so they don't have to go to the menu bar. So if you notice under disposition management, when I put my cursor there, 2 items appear under there, create disposition request and search disposition request. Those are the same items that we have right here as well too. Okay, so again, you can either go here and select the item, or you can go down to the boxes down below. The only item we don't have as a box is the report section. So if you want to go in and print any reports, you have to go to the reports home screen and then get access to your report section. Because there's so many reports in that section, we don't list that as a separate box down here. So again, that's how you would get to those items. So again, these 3 boxes kind of duplicate what's up here in your menu bar. And then the last thing we have here in the lower left-hand corner is our inbox, or our dashboard. So when you first log into the system, what you should really do is look at your dashboard and see what's going on in your dashboard. Now, except for the last item in the dashboard, which is the number of published retention schedules that are total within the system, the first couple items represent certain tasks that are being worked on within the system. Now, we see today everything is at a 0, right? Because we haven't done anything under this new user, right? This user we just registered is brand new, has not done anything yet within the system. So again, we have zeros in all those items. But as we start to work in the system, we start to do different functions within the system, you'll notice that those zeros will go to a number. It could be a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, okay? And that's a quick way to get to those items within that function. So if I created or started to create a disposition request and I have not submitted that request yet to the state for approval, then my 0 under work in progress are going to go up. So if I have one request that I'm currently working on, this would be a number 1. And I can click on that link to quickly get to that request. I don't have to actually go and search under search disposition request to find it. I can quickly get to my work in progress. Same thing with disposition requests that are ready to be submitted to the state. And then eventually, once the state either approves or rejects them, I can get to those items as well too quickly just by clicking on these links. So again, we're going to go through this in a few minutes just so I can show you, how you click on those links. So that's the layout of the home screen. I just wanted to give everybody a quick layout just so they understand that. So that being said, let me just take a look. I see I have a couple questions here. Okay, so from Amanda, I am an agency that fills out dorm forms for municipalities and schools. Typically, they give me their login unless they don't have one. Should I be added to their list as the records manager? Amanda, I'm not sure. If you're an independent person, no, you should not be listed. You should not be a records manager for their organization. Records manager is somebody who works for the organization. So if you work for them and you're on their payroll, then yes, you could be set up as a records manager. But if you're an independent person who just helps out, then no, you'll probably want to be set up as what we call a multi-agency user. The records manager of that organization would have to register first and then add you as a user within the system. So that's how I would handle that. The next question, what about the first-time users or the new PC link? Don't worry about that right now. This is our test system. In the live system, those links will not be there. So in the old system, before we made changes to the system, there were certain things that you would have to run on your computer. This no longer applies. Again, I'm working in our test system. We have to talk to our developers about removing that. But in the live system, you won't have to worry about that link down there. Because, again, I gave you the system requirements on that sheet later on. Okay. So now that I've done the layout of the screen, what's the first thing that you need to do as a new records manager in the system? Now, the way that the system was originally designed was, and you have to understand that with counties and municipalities, Each organization has multiple departments, and that's what we call an agency. With the Board of Ed, each retention schedule is usually assigned to an agency, but with the Board of Education, typically you guys do everything a little bit differently, where one person kind of handles all the retention schedules that are there for the whole agency. But unfortunately, you have to register each retention schedule for that organization, right? And I think the Board of Ed has 5 or 6 different retention schedules. So as a new records manager, there's a task that you're going to do. This is a one-time task that you have to do, and that's called Register New Agency. So if I click on this link right here, okay, I'm going to come up here, okay, and you'll notice at the very top that some of the items are already grayed out because it knows who I belong to, right? It already knows I'm a Board of Education organization. It knows that I'm in Camden County and I'm with Cherry Hill Township. But over to the right where it says agency, there is a drop-down list, right? And here you'll see the different retention schedules that are available for the Board of Education. Now, I'm new working with Board of Education, so I'm not sure if you utilize every single retention schedule that's here. I would assume at a minimum you're using the administration retention schedule and definitely the student and financial schedule all the time. I'm not really sure about facilities, curriculum, and cafeteria. But my recommendation is since this is a one-time setup, just go in there and set up each retention schedule the very first time. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes to do it. But once it's done, it's done. You never have to worry about it again. Okay? And the way you register an agency or a retention schedule is you'll pick the schedule number, right? So you'll see I have 6 here listed on the list. I'm going to pick the administration one, the first one. Okay? And again, you'll just have to type your same information over that you had before. So I'll just type in my information. Now in this section here, records manager information is optional. You can fill it in. You can do the copy by checking the checkbox and just pull the information from above down. Either one, like I said, you don't have to. It's not required. There's no red asterisk there. But once you fill out this information here and I click on register, okay, what I'll do is I'll get a message in green up at the top of the screen that tells me this retention schedule, the M700101, has been registered successfully. Okay. Now I can go and register my next schedule. And if I go up to the agency dropdown, now you'll notice that there's only 5 schedules left. Okay, so as the agency gets registered, it comes off the list. Okay, so administration is no longer in the list. So now if I wanted to go down and register a second schedule, okay, let me go down and do the student one real quick. Again, I will just type in my information. And again, this is a one-time setup. So like I said, it should take like about 5 minutes to do. RM. Okay, so I filled out my information. I'm going to click register here as well too. Okay, it's going to tell me that this schedule has been registered successfully if I've done everything right, which it has been. And again, if I wanted to register, if you look at my list again, now we're down to 4. Okay, so again, the first 2 agencies have been registered. I'm down to 4, and again, I can continue this process and get all my agencies registered. You do have to register an agency first, or this retention schedule first, in order to have access to it when you go to process a disposition request. If you try to process a disposition request, or if, let's say I went to process a disposition request and I had a record series number from the financial schedule and I haven't registered this agency yet, it's not going to allow me to pick that retention schedule. Okay, so that's why I said it's a one-time pass. Go in, do it, get it done, and then you don't have to ever worry about it again once it's registered. So let me go back out to the home screen. Let me just talk about agency information real quick. So let's say I've had my agencies registered for a period of time, okay? Let's say now that the information that's in there changes for some whatever reason. It could be maybe the address, maybe the person registered, the main person registered for that agency. Well, you can always come to the search agency section right here where it says search agency, okay? And what I could do is when I go into there, I could just hit the search button and pull up all my agencies that are registered, okay? And then if I have to change anything within any of those schedules, I just click on the details button on the right-hand side, and then I can go in and I can either review the information or I can change the information if need be. So in this case here, okay, I can come in here and I can update the information. You'll also notice down here, and the state manages this at the very bottom. For some organizations out there, not obviously everybody, but there are some Board of Eds out there that do document imaging and scanning and are certified, or their systems are certified by the state. What they'll do is eventually they will update this information number or this information with your registration number for your certification. Again, you don't have to worry about that. You cannot do that, but if you ever need to reference that at some point in time, they will update this information in the section. You also have a custodian information section as well too. So again, if there's somebody, and again, this is a drop down you can pull up to make it easier to enter that information. You can fill out the custodian information as well too here listed. A lot of times organizations will put, like for Board of Eds, they might use the business administrator as the custodian information or whatever. They'll list that there as well too, and then we can just add it to that agency information. Again, when you go to do the disposition request, it'll make it a little bit easier to pull that information instead of having to type it. But again, that's optional. It is not required, but if you want to add it, you can add it. So let me go back out to the home screen. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about adding additional users to the system. Okay, so in the system management section, we have where it says add user, right? So I'm going to click that add user. Okay. And what you want to do here is you'll notice that your user role says agency records manager. So if I wanted to register a backup records manager for my organization, we're already defined to that role here. The other role that we have is what we call a multi-agency records disposal user. Now this user role will not have access to the system admin stuff. Like they'll not be able to register new agencies or update agencies. They will not be able to register new users or update users. All they'll be able to do is submit disposition requests, okay? So what I would do is, like I said, for your backups, for your records manager backups, you can definitely set those users up by filling out their information here. Again, I'm not going to set a backup right now. I'm not going to add another records manager. It's pretty self-explanatory where you're going to put their first name, last name, phone number, email address, PIN number. They'll pick a username, or you'll pick a username for them, and their password, okay? And then hit save, and now they'll be registered in the system. But the other users you'll do, if you want just regular users to be registered who can process disposition requests, then they will be set up as what we call multi-agency records disposal users, okay? Same information is required. It's just that the multi-agency user does not have admin rights within the system. They cannot do any of the system management functions within the system, but they do have access to do everything else. So again, that's how we set up those users within the system. Eventually, if you want to go back out, if we want to go back out to, what's going on here? Give me 1 second. I'll get this little thing here. Let's cancel this and go back out to the home screen. Okay. So once I'm back to the home screen, the other thing you can do is besides adding new users, you can search all your users. So if I click on search users, I can go in and search any users that have been registered in the system. So again, that's how we go in and we search our users and we pull our users up within the system. So again, that's our housekeeping items, our system management items. There's a couple different tasks there that you do, but for the most part, that's all you need to do. And just one last thing is that for the multi-agency users, when they're registered, they will not see this box here on their screen. Okay, so this box will not be existent. Same thing with the menu item up top. This will not be there as well too. All they'll have is disposition management, retention schedule, and reports on their screen. So just be aware that if they are a multi-agency user, they will not see the system management box. So before I get into searching this retention schedules, let me see, I have a couple of questions here. So let me go in, or one question actually, from Janet. Why isn't the agency selection a checkbox type so you can register more than one at a time? Janet, you have to understand that this system was designed 8 years ago, and it was mainly designed for more the counties and the municipalities at that point in time. It's just the way of the original system design and how the state actually works. Because you could theoretically have within an organization, a Board of Ed organization, that different people manage different agencies or different retention schedules within that organization. So that's the reason why you actually have to register each one independently. Again, in your organization, if everything's the same, yeah, I know it's a pain, but like I said, once it's done, it's done. It should take you no more than 5 or 10 minutes to do it. So again, that's how the original system design was, and it would have taken a lot of work to change that design. Again, we had to work within a budget that the state was allocating, to do this additional rollout to both the Board of Ed and to the, to the state agency. So that wasn't one of the main items that had come up as part of, changes within the system. So apologize for that, but like I said, it should take you only a couple of minutes to get that registered. Okay, so let's move on now in our agenda. So the next thing I want to talk about is retention schedules. Okay, so in the past, most people, when they want to search for record series numbers or retention policies on a retention schedule, primarily what you've probably done in the past is you've probably navigated out to the RMS website, out on the state website. You've gone to the retention schedule that you need, and you've downloaded that particular schedule or printed it out, and you have a copy of it. Like I said, we saw before, right now for Board of Education, there are 6 different schedules that you would need to manage. Okay? Now, when you're looking for a record series or retention policy, you might know, because you've been working with the retention schedule for a while, which schedule you need to go to. But when you take that paper schedule and you need to find a record series number on there, what you start doing is you start flipping page by page by page, okay, trying to find that record series number that matches the record that you're trying to dispose of. The other thing that comes up is that when you do print out those retention schedules, okay, depending when you printed those retention schedules depends on how valid those retention schedules are. And what I mean by that is if you're dealing with, and I've seen it where people have retention schedules that they literally printed 5 years ago. Well, that retention schedule that you printed 5 years ago might not be valid today, okay? The record series numbers and the retention policies on that schedule might have changed. So what we've done in the Artemis system to make it easier for everybody is we give you the ability to quickly go in and search retention schedules by using keywords, okay? So if I click on search retention schedule right here, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the screen so we can actually go in and we can actually search for record series numbers within the system. I will let you know that the Artemis system is the system that the state uses to author all retention policies for all organizations within the state, okay? So when you go in here and you pull up a retention policy or a record series number within the retention schedule search, it's the most accurate, up-to-date information that you're going to get, okay? It's valid as of right now when I'm in the system. So the first thing we're going to do is, again, because this is a multi-organization system, we need to pick what organization type we are. Again, I'm going to pick Board of Education, okay? And the main 2 fields that we utilize to search by keyword in this screen are both by record series title, which we see over here. Let me kind of bring my highlighter, okay, right there, and description, right? So these 2 areas are basically what we're going to use right here to put our keywords in and actually to search by description. So let's take, for example, I want to search, I'm just going to pick the word students, right? I want to see all record series titles that contain the word students in them, right? And I'm going to click on, I'm going to type my keyword, and I'm going to hit search. And what's going to happen is we're going to see that we had 3 hits that came up, okay? We're going to see that we have a record series that came from the administration schedule. I see a record series that came from the curriculum and instruction schedule, and I also see a record series that came from the student schedule, okay? So when you do that keyword search, it's actually searching every single retention schedule, Board of Ed retention schedule, all 6 schedules, okay, at one time. You don't have to go through and flip page by page by page looking for all record series titles that have the word students, right? And if we look in the record series title column, you'll notice that I have the word students listed in that title, right? So in the first one it says Governor School for Gifted/Exceptional Students, okay, copy. The second one says Governor School for Gifted Exceptional Students, copy, okay? Now, these record series titles happen to be the same, but they actually appear on 2 different schedules, okay? Now, it is very possible that at one point in time, one of these, or they could still be active items, they could still be active record series, but I'm not sure why this particular item appears twice in the same thing. But if I wanted to look at the details of this record series, all I need to do here is click on the details button, And what that's going to do is that's going to open up the screen to show me the detailed information of this record series, okay? So what I see here is, let me get my highlighters so I can kind of go through some things here. So the first thing we see here is here's the record series number, right? So 0041000, okay? The next thing you want to make sure is that your status always says active, okay? Because as the state changes stuff for record series, there's very possibility that this record series number is no longer active. If it's not an active record series number, you will not be able to use it and put it on the disposition request. So you might see some other statuses called retired or obsolete. If you see retired or obsolete, you can no longer use that record series number. You have to go find a valid current record series number that you need to use. We'll see what the title of that record series is right here, right? So we saw that before in the first screen. Here's a description that the state has put in, an additional description, okay, that you can take a look at. The group name and supersedes more. You don't have to worry about that. That doesn't really apply to you. It applies more for the state schedules than it does at your level. But really the section you want to look at is kind of like right here, right? Because this is your disposition or your retention schedule, right? So the first item that you see in there says permanent record, and typically that will be a yes or no answer, okay? If this was a yes, and this is a permanent record, all the other fields are going to be not applicable, right? They're not going to technically apply, okay? But if it isn't a permanent record and it says no, then I'm going to see what my retention policy is here. In this case, it says 3 years, okay? If there was any additional information regarding retention policy, it would be listed next. Minimum at agency. These are records that the state requires you to keep at the department level or the agency level for a minimum period of time before you box them up and store them away. I don't know at the Board of Ed level if there's many of them, if any at all, but if you see something listed here other than not applicable, it just lets you know that that record has to be kept at the department level for a set period of time before you could actually box it up and put it away into storage. If there was any additional information about the agency listed, it would be here as well too. And then your final disposition, okay, in this case says archival review, okay? So again, I'm just getting familiar with some of these Board of Ed record series numbers. I'm not sure why this one is listed as archival review, but it could be an incorrect item because below that, where it says archival review required, it says no. So again, we'll have to take a look at that with the state. And again, this we'll have to see if this is just an error on their part. But typically, let me go back here for a second. Let me pick one. Let me go back. Let me pick one that obviously doesn't have archival review, so I could show you the retention policy. Hopefully, let's see this one here. Okay, so in this case here, right, this record happens to be a 100-year retention schedule, but my final disposition says destroy. So after 100 years, I'm able to destroy this record, okay? So again, that's what your final disposition status is. Most of your stuff, probably 99% of your items will say destroy. You will see some items like the one we just saw that says archival review. Again, I don't know why that one said archival review. But you might also see some stuff that says erase. So if you have some tapes or recordings or something, that's a record series number, those will say erase or, instead of destroy. The last section here goes down below where it says archival review required, yes or no, alternate media recommended, yes or no, or audit verification, yes or no. Again, archival review is used more at the state level. That's why it confused me on that last one, why that one says archival review. I'll have to check with RMS to see maybe it's just a mistake on their part or what they selected. But these two are more for you guys where it says alternate media recommended. This is basically saying that if a record series or the state has said that we would like you to put this record series onto like microfilm, this would be answered a yes, okay? And then the last section here is where it says audit verification required is really auditor verification required. So when you go to submit your disposition request to the state, if an auditor is required to sign off on that request for a particular record series number, okay, that would be listed as a yes as well too. If it's no, you don't have to send this particular record series to the auditor to be signed off on. So I think what I've been told from Board of Ed, most Board of Ed sends everything to the auditor no matter what. So again, it doesn't hurt you to send it to the auditor, to have your auditor sign off on it. It's just letting you know that the state does designate certain record series that do have to go to the auditor as well as some that do not have to go to the auditor. And that's basically, what that flag does there. The bottom section is more around record series that are maybe governed by state statute or federal law. In that case, you would actually see under citations, you'd actually see the statute number or the federal statute number listed there. Again, Board of Ed, I'm not sure if that applies. I do see that at the state, municipal, and county governments that there are certain record series that are governed by statute. So again, if it is governed by a statute, we would list the statute number there. The last thing is in the lower right-hand corner, there's a print button. Okay. Now, for the people who still like to have paper and still want to print out a retention schedule, okay, we give you the ability to still print out that retention schedule from the system. You don't have to go out to the state site in order to print that retention schedule. You can just click on that print button down below. What we'll do is you'll have it come up in PDF form on the screen first. So all our print functions in the system always go to the screen as a PDF first. And then at that point in time, we give you the option either to physically print it or download or save on your computer that, in this case, this retention schedule. So again, if you're dealing with retention schedules, this should look familiar to you, okay? At this point in time, I can go here, I can either print it or I can save it, and then from there, I have a copy of that locally, within my office. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the state is constantly making changes to retention policies and record series numbers and retention schedules. I'm not saying that they're always making changes to the Board of Ed schedules, but they do periodically. So since you have the ability in the system to always get to the most up-to-date information, I like to say paper and trees, right? I mean, you guys are managing enough paper as it is. Why print out another document that you have to manage, within your organization, especially since you're able to go in there and quickly pull up that information by doing keyword searches. So again, if you want to print it, we have the option there, but again, we don't recommend that you print this out just for the fact that, if you print it out today, theoretically tomorrow it can be outdated. Okay, so let me go back to this screen here, right? I want to go back to my search results, just show you a couple other search things as we go through here. Now, when I first put in my record series title earlier, I put in the word student, and I specifically put in student as a plural with the S at the end. And the reason why I want to show you that is be careful if you use punctuation or you pluralize certain keywords, right? Because if I remove the S from student and just put the word student, okay, and hit search, okay, you'll see that my results go from 3 items to 45 items, right? So just by removing the S from, students, now I have more items that come up. So as you're doing your keyword searches, I usually say that the less you put in, the more you're going to get back in your search results. The more you put in, the less you're going to get back, if you understand, what I mean by that. But as you notice here, if I just put the word student, then in the record series title column, you'll see that that word student appears multiple times. You also have the word, the other 3 record series that we originally pulled up come up as well too, because student is part of that. But I just wanted to show you that just be careful when you're putting in your search or your keywords, using punctuation or pluralizing, or even putting in multiple words. Like if I put student record, I might not get a hit, right? Because it would have to be an exact match, right? So if I put student record, not sure if anything's there, right? I might not get a hit. Oh, I know I do. Look at that. I get 10, right? Because if you notice in the record series title, like the first one says adult education student record. So you can use multiple phrases as well too, okay? In this case, I got 10 hits that came up, right? So you can kind of see the different ways that I just searched and brought items up. Now, one other way you can search in the system is by description, right? Let me go back and put in my word student again and hit search under description. Now, in each record series, not every record series has a description, okay? So just be cautious of that, right? Not every record series has a description. But if you look at my record series title column, right, let me just look down. If we look at the 3rd line item there, okay, where it says Middle States Association of Colleges and Schools Accreditation, you don't see the word student anywhere in the record series title, right? And the reason for that is because that word student is somewhere in the description, okay? And if I put my cursor down there, okay, on this, where'd it go right here? Okay, now it's not popping up because it's so big, okay? Somewhere in there, okay, I'll do the next one because that's popping up to me. Somewhere in that description that the state has entered in, the word student is somewhere listed in that description, right? And you can see how big that description is that popped up, okay? So somewhere in there is that word student, okay? So again, it's just another way to search. So if you're doing searches by keywords and you're not finding the record series that you're looking for, You can always go in and do a search by description and see if you can find it that way as well too. But being able to do keyword search, almost like you're doing a Google type search, is a lot quicker than having to flip page by page by page on a retention schedule. Okay. So again, those are the different ways that you can search and pull up record series and record series information within the system. So that's how you search retention schedules. Let me go back out to the home screen, because now what we're going to do is we're going to go into processing a disposition request and how do we do that. But before I do that, I'm going to check any questions I have, and I have quite a few questions here, so let me run through them. Question from Nancy. Would I type in special education students for that retention schedule? And I'm not sure. I think your question got cut off there, Nancy, so if you want to ask the question again, I'm not sure about the special education students, what you mean by that exactly. So if you want to rephrase your question, that's fine. If not, like you said, at the end, I'll leave my email. You can email me and give me your contact information. We could talk a little bit further about that so I can understand more. When does the electronic disposal system start? As I mentioned, we're targeting for next Monday, around the 3rd of August. You should be able to start going in and actually using the system. So I just want to, that was the next question. Next question from Brian. What does archive review mean? Technically, what archive review means is that there's certain record series, and again, that's why I was a little confused at that, seeing it at the Board of Ed level. It mainly revolves more around state record series numbers, where certain documents or records the state archives want to keep and hold on for historical purposes. So again, there could be certain record series at the Board of Ed level, but I think that one was just a mistake there for Brian. So again, I have to talk to the state about that to make sure that that's not. It could be correct, but again, based on the description, I don't think that's correct. I think somebody just picked the wrong archival review section there. Next question, where do I find out how long I need to keep records of students that have moved or transferred a different school system? I believe, again, you would have to talk to the state specifically on that. From what I read in the record retention policy, is that a student record is a student record is a student record, no matter if that person has moved to another district. And I think it's a 100-year retention policy that you have to keep that student record. So I believe, from what I've been told, that if the student was in your district for 2 months and you have a student record, you have to keep that record for 100 years. Okay, so I don't think it matters if that student has moved or not. But again, any questions like that, I would recommend that you contact the state directly and get verification from them. Somebody said, put in the word payroll and see what comes up. Okay, so I'll jump back real quick. We'll see. Bear with me here 1 second. Now, if I put in payroll, let me click Board of Ed, and I do a quick search. Bear with me here 1 second. Okay. So, Suzette, there you go. So I put in the word payroll, right, and I had 7 record series that came back. Okay. As you can see, they're all from the financial schedule. Okay. So again, if you wanted to go in and look at that retention policy for payroll, all you would need to do is click on the details button, and you would actually go in and find that policy for each one of these records by clicking on the details. So again, you do have 7 records that did come back by me doing a search by payroll. I could do a search by description as well too. Just do a quick search there, and let's see. I don't know if I'm going to have any records that come up. Oh, here we have 4, right? And if you look, here's my example. Like if we look at that first record that came up, it says employee file, full and part-time, right? I don't see the word payroll anywhere in that record series title. But again, if I put my cursor on that and I see the box that comes up with the description, somewhere in that description is the word payroll, right? So again, with some of these record series, right, where here's an employee file, full and part-time, the description probably indicates all the different type of documents that would be included in that employee file, right? So again, going through that, you can see that that description is pretty extensive. You'd have to kind of go through that. But you see me doing 2 different types of search, I got different results that came up. So I hope that answered your question, Suzette. From Barbara, will a county vocational technical school be listed in the Board of Education of the county? Yes, Barbara. That's one of the things we're working on. We're finalizing because we had all the regular school districts initially in the list that we got. We are working on those vocational I believe county colleges, charter schools, all those additional, I don't want to say odd organizations, but not the norm from your typical municipality school board. That's what we're working on right now. That's the final things that we're working on to get the system prepared. So yes, that will be available to you. Like I said, our target date is next Monday. Next question from Shelley. If it needs audit approval first, what do we send to them for review? You're going to you do the same process you did today. You're going to send them a copy of the disposition form, okay? So after you sign off on the disposition form locally at your organization, you're going to send that to your auditor. The auditor is going to review it and sign it and send that form back to you. And at that point in time, then what you'll do is you'll scan and upload that in the system to submit to the state for approval. But give me a few minutes, Shelley, and we'll go through that disposition process in a few minutes. Does the contain search exactly as you put in the student record, or does it search those words and put together student plus record? Okay, Janet. So what Janet's asking me is that when I put in my search criteria here, you'll notice that over to the right, and I didn't really touch on it, but there are two radio buttons here that one says starts with and contains, and by default we list the word contains. And the reason why we do that is if I put in that word student, because it says contains, no matter where in that description, whether it's the record series title or the record series description, no matter where student appears in that title or description, it's going to give me a hit. But if I click on starts with and I put student in, let's say for example, okay, that record series title would have to start with the word student, okay? So we have 7 that come up, right? And if you look at those record series titles there, each one of those record series titles starts with the word student. We typically leave it as contained because, you know, if you're familiar with working with record series titles, you don't always know how the state maybe has titled something. So by keeping the word contains as the default, it just makes it easier that that keyword that you're putting in, no matter where it's found in that description or title, it's going to give you a hit and it's going to pull it back. But by all means, if you want to click on starts with and you want to just find everything that starts with a particular keyword, by all means, you can switch that and do a search on that. But just please remember that you might miss what you're looking for by doing starts with as compared to contains. And the last question says, but does contain search as there were quotes around it or it has both? No, we don't do anything with quotes or anything like that, Janet. This isn't like an advanced type of search like a Google search in that sense of thing. It's really just a straight flat keyword search or keyword phrase that you would need to search on, you know, to pull those items up. So again, you know, the search is it's a simple search. It's not a complicated search like a Google type search. I wish it was, but I mean, there's a lot more programming and development that would have to go in order to make that, you know, possible. Okay, so those are all the questions I have for right now. Let me move on. I'm trying to keep going here. Try to get everything done in the next 15, 20 minutes. Okay. So the next section is, we're going to talk about it, how to create a disposition request, right? So now I've gone through searching my record series. Okay, I know what record series I want to use. I know what my policies are. Now I want to actually start creating my disposition request. Now, you're probably familiar. You've been doing or utilizing still the 4-part form, okay? And believe it or not, that 4-part form has actually been around since the 1950s. That's when this whole process actually started. But now that we're in the modern age, okay, as I mentioned earlier, you know, with the counties and the municipalities, they've, you know, processed over 28,000 disposition requests electronically to the state. The way you would do that is here under disposition management, we're going to click on create disposition request. And when we do that, what's going to happen is we're going to come up with a screen here where we need to start to select some items. Now in the top section, I need to start selecting different items. So the first thing we're going to do in the drop-down is, what agency or retention schedule do I want to work with, right? So again, let's say I have record series numbers that are on the administration schedule. I'm going to need to pick that as compared to record series that I might have on the student schedule. Now, one of the changes that you might encounter now utilizing the Artemis system, okay, is that with the paper-based form system, you were able to utilize record series numbers from different schedules on the same form. Technically, that was not the correct way to do it. You were supposed to create a disposition form for each retention schedule and just list those record series numbers from that schedule on the form. Fortunately, the state was lenient in that sense, and they allowed people to mix record series number from different schedules on the form. But now with the Artemis system, you will need to you can only use record series numbers from their respective schedules. So if I have record series numbers both from the administration schedule and I have record series numbers from the student schedule, I will need to create two separate disposition requests and process two separate disposition requests. Unfortunately, that's technically the requirements from the state. It's just that with the paper-based system, they were very lenient on that, and people mix different record series numbers from different schedules on the same form. So let me pick the administration schedule first. Okay, so once I pick that, what I'm going to do is it's going to allow me now to go down and, hold on 1 second here, okay, down to the schedule number, right, and I need to just pick that schedule number again, okay, so we pick the same schedule, okay. Where it says limit record series to those not requiring archival review, as I mentioned earlier, almost all your record series numbers will not require archival review. Now that one that I had pulled up earlier that did say archival review, I would have to select or change this option to those requiring archival review to put them on their own disposition request. Again, stuff that requires archival review from the state side needs a separate disposition request. But those not requiring archival review are the majority of your items, so by default, that's what we have. And I wouldn't touch that. Like I said, that other one we saw earlier, I believe, is incorrect, and we'll have to get that corrected. Request his first name and last name will pull your information. Since you're logged into the system, it will pull your information and populate it there. If you want to put your title, you can put your title. I'll just put R into Records Manager. If you want to list your custodian's name, his or her name there, you can put that. I'll just put in John Smith right now as my custodian's name. And then down below, you're going to see 3 checkboxes here, right? It says microfilm present, digital image present, and damage record certificate. They're all checkboxes. Now, these checkboxes are utilized for special conditions and will not typically be utilized by most people, but I just want to go over them so everybody understands that. The state does allow you to process a disposition request to destroy records that have long-term retention policies, greater than 10 years. As long as you put those records onto microfilm, you have a backup of those records, okay? So for the organizations out there that put records onto microfilm, okay, what you would need to do is you would need to click on this checkbox, okay, and what you would also need to do is that when you scan in your signed disposition form, you would also need to scan in your microfilm certification certificate from your vendor that you received your microfilm from. This lets the state know or show or prove to them that you put those records onto microfilm, so if you are trying to process a disposition request early, okay, for records before the retention period, that's what you would need to do. The same thing is relatively true for the digital image present. There are multiple Board of Eds out there that do document imaging, okay? And as you're aware, if you're doing document imaging, okay, the state allows you to request disposal of records before the retention period if you're utilizing a certified document imaging system. And then you're just letting the state know that, yes, you have a certified system, you're putting your images on an imaging system. Again, you will need to send a copy of your imaging certification certificate along with your disposition request in order to have that approved. And the last thing, it's not common, but it does happen on occasion, is that records might have been damaged some way, okay? A couple of years ago, we had Hurricane Sandy. A lot of towns down the shore area, Monmouth and Ocean County, had records that were damaged, beyond repair, if you want to call it. You have to go through the damage record certification process. It's a separate process with the state. But if you go through that process and they issue a damage record certificate and you have that certificate and those are the records that you're asking permission to destroy, you will need to check this box and also include a copy of that damage certificate as well too, along with your request. So again, these are special conditions. They do not apply to most people on an everyday basis, but there are some organizations out there that do utilize those areas, and they would have to check them as such. Where it says location, this is more for your reference, where the records are stored, basement, attic, outside storage facility, commercial storage facility like an Iron Mountain, just so you list it there as well too. RIM request ID does not apply to you. That's for another system that we utilize, records management system, so you don't have to worry about that. And then the comments box here is for you to send comments to the state when you're submitting your request. Okay, so whatever you want to inform or notify the state of, you can type in, any comments in there. So I'm just going to put in here, have a nice day. Right? But those comments that you list in that box will be transmitted to the state, and they will see those comments. So if you have anything special you want to let them know about this disposition request, type it in the comments section. Once you type it there, that information will go to them when you submit this request. So that's the information up at the top, right? Basic information. Down below is where we actually start entering in our record series numbers and our record series information. And you could do that a couple of ways. What you could do is you can either type it, if you know the 4 or the 8-digit record series number, okay, you can physically type that in here by putting the first 4 digits and the next 4 digits. Or an easier way might be to just click on the question mark here, and what that does is that's going to open up a box or a list of box of all the record series numbers. Okay, so we'll give it a second here to pop up, okay, which you should see there. And this list will be for all the record series on the administration schedule in numerical order, right? So we can see all those different records listed there. And once I find the number that I'm looking for, maybe I didn't have the number, but I know it was on the schedule, all I need to do is just click on the number, and what's going to happen at that point in time is this box will close. It will automatically fill in the record series number here for you, along with the description and also the retention period. In this case, it says 3 years. It then will take you over to the date fields, right, where you enter in your earliest record to your most recent record for that particular record. So here I'm going to put in, I have records that go from 01-2001. We always recommend using January, January at the beginning of the year. Now, somebody mentioned in my last webinar I did last week that most school boards do their calendar year, I guess, is 7/1 to June 30th. That's fine as well, too. I mean, if that's what you've typically been doing in the past, by all means, you can continue to do that, okay? But typically, I usually say the beginning of the year to the end of the year, right, in this case, okay? Your medium type, most of your records are going to be in paper, but you do have other medium types you can pick from there. Again, if you have tapes or recordings or something or whatever, you can pick those other medium types. And then your volume is how much in volume are you asking to dispose of, right? Now, we typically know that our typical storage box is a 1 cubic foot box. Let's say I have 5 boxes of correspondence. All I need to put in there is a 5. But let's say I had 5.5 boxes. Well, I can select from the drop down a 1/2 cubic foot as well, too. Okay? So a couple different things I can put in there. Now, once I enter that first line of information in, I want to click on Save at the bottom. As I mentioned earlier when I first started, we were talking about logging in or logging out of the system, and I said for security reasons, if you haven't done anything in the system for a period of time, the system will automatically log you out. If I had put in those record series numbers and I did not hit Save, and the system automatically logged me out, I would have lost all that information I put in. So I always say that after you've put each line in, you can hit Save and save that record, right? And we'll see up in the top left, it says disposition request saved successfully. Now, a couple of things here when you're working with record series numbers or adding system or numbers to the system. You don't have to do everything on the same day, right? So let's say I put in a couple of record series numbers in today. I can come back later today to add some more. I can come back tomorrow, next week, next month, and keep adding to this request. It's what we call, the status of this request is what we call a work in progress, okay? I'm working on it. I can keep adding to this request. I can keep changing, editing, doing whatever to this request, okay? So again, if I come in later today or tomorrow and I want to add more record series to this request, I could do one of 2 things. I can either add one row at a time by clicking Add New Row, or if I click on Add Multiple Rows, the system will allow me to click multiple record series at one time and actually populate all those, all that information for me, similar to before when I clicked on that question mark. So let me have this pop-up box come up real quick. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so here's the pop-up box that came up, right? And you'll notice that similar to what we had before when we clicked on the question mark, okay, we have all our record series numbers, right? But the only difference now, okay, is I have checkboxes next to each one, right? So I can come in here and I can click on different checks or whatever, right? Pick multiple items at one time, then hit OK, okay? And what's going to happen is when I hit OK, the system is actually going to now add all those lines that I checked on the checkboxes to the screen. The only thing I need to do now is I need to come in here and I need to put in my date range. Now, a couple of things about date ranges. If I have records that have a contiguous date, so let's say I have correspondence that goes from 2001 to 2005, I don't have to enter in each year independently as a separate line item. I don't have to put in 2001 as a separate line, 2002, 2003, and so on. I can span my dates from, let's say, 01-2001, to, let's say, 12-2005. Okay, I can expand those dates. Okay, but if you have a break in date, let's say I had correspondence from 2001 to 2003, I was missing 2004 and 2005, and then I had 2006 to 2008. At that point, you do have to put two separate lines. Okay, if the date span does not span contiguous for the entire record set, you then have to put in two lines or more than two lines, depending on what your breaks are. So just keep that in mind as well, too. The system is capable of basically, I hate to use this word loosely, but unlimited lines. I've had people submit disposition requests literally with 400 line items on it. Do I recommend it? No. And the reason why I don't recommend it is because for some reason, if you submit a request with a lot of lines and the state ultimately goes and rejects that request, does an outright rejection, you then have to do all those lines over again and correct everything. Okay? So I tell people, manage your requests in a manageable form, anywhere from, let's say, you could do one line item up to maybe 20, 25 line items. That's a request that's manageable, okay? If you have more than 25 line items, just do a second request. No big deal, okay? But by all means, if you want to do a request with, 100, 150, 200 line items, by all means do that. Just be aware that if that request gets rejected and you need to resubmit that, you're going to have to enter in all those line items again, okay? So, keep it, manageable. Okay, so let me enter some more dates in here. Go through this request real quick. And as I add my dates here, I'm just going to kind of use the same date range for some of these. And then the last one's 01-2001 through 12-2003. Enter all my date ranges in. I'm going to click Save and save all my information. So now, two things I want to point out to you is if you notice the line items that I've entered into the system here, okay? One of them is the last one that I entered in, right? I accidentally picked a permanent record, okay? We don't stop you necessarily from putting a permanent record on there. There are times that certain, what happened here? There are times that certain permanent records are eligible to be disposed of if you put them on microfilm. So that's why we don't necessarily stop you. Okay, what happened here? See, now I had a system error. Thank God I saved the one before, but I probably just lost what I was doing. So let me go back out to my home screen. Okay. So this actually brings me up to a good point, too. On my home screen, if I look at my dashboard, under Disposition Request Work in Progress, it says 1, right? So this is the one that I created. If I click on that link, it'll quickly take me to that request. And I will click on the Edit button to get in there and start working on that again. Yeah, and I lost a couple of my items here. I guess must have been a network issue there. That's why, again, I point out that when you're working on requests, keep it manageable. Don't try to do too much at one time. Because again, this is a web-based system, so network issues can cause some issues. So let me just take a couple here real quick. 25, add them back in. Apologize for that. And let me put in my details. Okay, so let me try saving this again. Okay, so as I was trying to say, or I was trying to get to before once this saves, is you notice that I entered a permanent record in there. Let's say by accident I selected that permanent record. I didn't really want that permanent record. If I want to delete anything that I've added to this request, all I need to do is click on the red X all the way on the right-hand side. So in this case, I'm going to remove this permanent record. I'm going to click on the X. It's going to ask me about moving this record. Okay, let's do that one more time. Sometimes with those pop-ups. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to remove that permanent record. So you'll notice that that's gone again. I'm going to click on Save because I've now removed that record. I want to make sure I hit Save after each action item I've done. And then the last thing I wanted to point out too is we have a column here that says Dispose After, and you notice there's a date there that says 12/20/30. Well, the reason why we have a date that popped up there, and it's kind of like a warning to you, is because the date range that I put in, and based on the retention period, right, kind of warns you that technically I can't dispose of these records until 12 or December 2030 because of the date range that I put in. Now, this could have been a mistake on my part. Maybe I put the wrong date range. Like I was putting all the same dates up above, and maybe this was really supposed to be 19. Let me go back here. Maybe this was supposed to be really 1980 through 1985. Right? And you'll notice at that point in time, when I put in the correct date range, that dispose after date goes away. Okay. Now the reason why, people say to me, Mark, well, why do you allow me to put a record series in that I can't technically dispose of today? If I can't dispose of it until 2030. Well, again, I go back to up to the special conditions at the top about the microfilm and the digital image present. The state allows you to dispose of records before the retention policy if those certain conditions are met. So again, that's why we don't force people from not putting it in, because I might have scanned these records into a certified system, and I'm requesting disposal of those records. I might have put them on microfilm. That's the reason why it allowed me to put that record in, because I might legitimately be able to request disposal of that record. Okay, so let's say I'm done for now with this, right? I've saved, everything's done. There's no more record series that I want to put on this request. What do I need to do now? Well, we need to print out our disposition request. We need to sign it. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a print button. Okay, I'm going to click on print. And what's going to happen is this is going to open up a PDF screen again with my disposition form, right? And you'll be familiar with this form, right? Here's your form, okay? Already filled out, okay? So again, this should be familiar to you, okay? At this point in time, what you will do is you will print out this form. You will apply your signatures at the organization level, right? So me as the requester, Alex Morgan, I'm going to sign it. I'm then going to give it to John Smith because that's who I put in as the custodian of records. He's going to sign it. And then if these records require an auditor's signature, okay, or you send everything to the auditor, you'll send this form to the auditor. The auditor will sign and date down in section 15. And then at that point in time, when you get that request back is when you're going to scan and upload that form into the system. But until you do that, you'll notice on this screen, my submit button that's in the middle of the screen is grayed out. I cannot do anything if I click on that submit button. That's because the system knows that a form has not been scanned into the system yet for you to submit to the state. So you cannot submit this request to the state until this form is submitted, okay? So let's say we've done everything. Let's say I've printed out the form. Let's say I've gotten my signatures. I've now scanned that form back into my local network or to my computer, right? I have a copy of that sitting on my computer. I scanned it with my copier. It's sitting on my computer. Now I need to get that form into the system. And the way you do that is on the same screen in the left-hand corner, there's a button that says Disposition Form Image, right? So this is what we're going to click on. And what's going to happen is, of course, it's giving me this screen here. Bear with me 1 second so I can show you this. Let's try it one more time. Oh, come on. Let's try it this way. Sorry about that. Sometimes this comes up with this webinar. It doesn't always allow me to share the screen. Okay, so let's try this. I want to share this screen here. Okay, so I think you can all see this screen now, hopefully. Nope, wrong one. Sorry, bear with me 1 second, folks. I'm trying to get this come up for me. It's not cooperating. Close this. Sorry, folks. I'm just, let's try this. Okay. Now I think I got it. Sorry about that. Okay. So now you see this other screen that came up here. This is where we're going to upload the disposition form. Okay. Now, the way that I do that is once this screen comes up, in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see a yellow folder icon. We're going to click on that yellow folder icon, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse out to where I scan that form in, right? I'm going to go out and pick the form that I have scanned into the system, okay? And what we're doing is we're basically uploading that form into the screen. So bear with me here while it's uploading. Now, this form isn't going to be the exact form that we just created here. Obviously, this is a sample form that I have. Okay, so it might not be the same record series numbers that I utilize, but just wanted to show you, here's a signed form, right, where I sign the form. I have my auditor's signature in the lower left-hand corner. And at this point in time, what I'm going to do is click on Save at the bottom of the screen. It's going to ask me, or it's going to tell me that I'm certifying that I've, read all the guidelines and procedures about scanning the document. Basically, that it's a TIFF format and all that, and we wouldn't allow you to scan or upload anything other than that TIFF format. But once this image is saved successfully and we get the green message up at the top, I can close this window. And now on this screen, you'll notice now that my Submit button is now enabled. Okay? And at this point in time, what we could do is we can now submit this to the state for them to review and approve that request. So I'm going to click on Submit. It's going to give you a statement that you're submitting the request based on all the guidelines of the state for submitting a request. It's basically the same language I believe you have at the bottom of the disposition form today. You're just going to acknowledge it by hitting OK. And once I do that, what's going to happen is it's going to tell me that my disposition status has been updated successfully, okay? And my status of this request is now at a submitted status. So we'll let this refresh here. And you will notice, as soon as this comes up, that my status over here says submitted, okay? So now this request has been submitted to the state. You're done. There's nothing else you can do at this point in time. You just need to wait for the state to respond with either an approval or a rejection. Okay, so I just wanted to that's how we submit that request. So I'm going to take a moment here. I'm going to look at some questions we have real quick and answer some questions. And we're almost done. Bear with me. I know we're running a little bit longer, but bear with me. We're almost done. So, Suzette, what if one document is listed in both admin and student? Do we need to file two separate disposition requests for that document? I'm not sure what record series would both be listed in both in retention schedules. I would pick only the record series that applies to the correct retention schedule. So if you have duplicate record series numbers, I would talk to RMS to take a look at that. Technically, I don't think there should be duplicate record series, but again, I'm not that familiar with the Board of Ed stuff. I'm learning as I go along here. There could be a reason why, but I would talk to them. But I would think you would use the one that applies more, or that's more applicable. So hope that answers that question. How does one get on the system in order to register? Again, Nancy, I went through that in the very beginning, the whole registration process. So again, if you did not see that, I would recommend that you either review the webinar once we post it on YouTube or sign up for another one of the trainings. That was covered in the very beginning. Can you list multiple years? For example, 01-2001 through 12-2005. Kimberly, yes. As long as the years are contiguous, that you have records for each one of those years, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2005, absolutely you could span those dates. But if you have a break in that date range, then you'll have to list those date ranges separately. So let's say 2001 to 2002, and then maybe 2004 to 2005 if you don't have 2003. But yes, you can absolutely span the dates, and we recommend that as well too. It says your description of document title is not always the same title of our document. Is there anywhere that we can make an internal note to ourselves indicating our document name? Ellen, unfortunately, no. Record series titles and descriptions are controlled by the state. What I would recommend is that if there are certain documents that you call one thing that the state doesn't, if it's something that's universal through, with all the Board of Education, you might make a recommendation to them to add that description or that title to their description. So if you're doing a search, it would pull it up. But unfortunately, no, there is no internal comment section for you to list what you call that particular document. As a matter of fact, the state's position has always been that you should be calling records what they list them as on their retention schedules. But obviously, we know that's not practical. But again, that's unfortunately, that's how it is. Amanda has a question that says, I am just a user and not the admin account. I can only save them, and then the admin must review them to submit them. You can do, That's fine. You might not be the admin, but you're the requester. You're the person that's processing the disposition request, Amanda. So you are going to actually sign off on the request as a requester. Then you're going to give that request to your admin to sign off as the second signature. Please remember that any request that goes to the state has to have at least 2 signatures from the organization. Okay? You can even put a third signature on there. There's another section up there, I think it's box number 5, where you can actually add a third signature if you want. That's fine. I mean, the more signatures, the better. But at a minimum, you need to have at least 2 signatures from the organization. If you do not, that request will be denied. I'll reject it. I'll let you know that right from the bat. So you have to have at least 2 signatures. Karen asked, how do you determine the volume in cubic feet? Well, I like to joke and say it's a guesstimation. The best way to do it is, take your typical storage box. Your typical storage box is a 1 cubic foot box. If that entire box is full with that record, it's 1 cubic foot. If it's half full, it's 0.50. If it's 3/4, it's 0.75. If you have 10 boxes, it's 10 cubic feet. Okay, so again, it's a guesstimation. Just do your best to determine how many cubic feet you have. Are you buying us lunch now? Suzette, I wish I could, but unfortunately, no. Let's see here. Does every form have to be signed by the records manager? No. Again, as I mentioned before, you have to have at least 2 signatures from your organization. Typically, the person who's doing the request is going to be signed as the requester, and then the custodian or administrator or whatever is going to be that second signature at a minimum. Again, 2 at a minimum. You can have 3 if you want. It doesn't hurt to have more than 2. It says, I had a computer hiccup. I missed a step between creating and scanning and then submit. Janet, again, I would suggest at that point in time to kind of go through the YouTube webinar video once we post that. We do also have on that sheet that I mentioned earlier, the training videos. There are videos up there right now as of today to go in and take a look. Those videos are broken up into multiple, right? So each section that I went through today actually is kind of its own video. So if you want to get a refresh, you can look at those videos from that download sheet. Karen asked, under what conditions do you need your auditor to sign the form? Typically, Karen, if a record series is labeled needs audit verification, that's when you need to have the form signed by your auditor, okay? Like I said, some organizations by default just send every disposition request to them to be signed just to be on the safe side. It doesn't hurt, but I do know some organizations do have problems with their auditor getting forms back on a timely basis, okay? So it's up to you, but if you look at that record series detail and it says audit verification required, then that's when you need the auditor to sign off on it. Okay. Kimberly asked, how do we know if the request is approved or rejected? Kimberly, give me 2 seconds, and I'm going to show you that in 1 second. So just bear with me 1 second, and we're going to get to that. And then Eileen asked, I used to direct our staff with records retention questions to Karen Perry. Who's currently responded to these questions? Eileen, there's a group of people down there. On the home screen of Artemis, there's a hotline number. They break down who you need to speak to by alphabet based on your organization name. I'm not sure. Again, everybody's different. There's about 6 or 7 people working down there that split the workload. Remember, this group handles all disposition requests from all municipalities, all counties, all state agencies, and also the Board of Ed. But I believe it's broken down by letter group, and I think somewhere on the state website, if you navigate out to the state website, the DOORS website, it lists those letter groups and the specific person who's there. But if you call the hotline number, which is on the home screen, and I'll bring that up when we're done, the person who answers that phone can direct you to the correct person. But I don't know offhand who would handle your organization offhand. Okay. So let me do this. Let's go back out to the home screen. I need to come in here. Give me 1 second because I need to approve that request that we just did. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so once you submit that request and it's sitting at the state for approval or rejection, what's going to happen is the state's going to review that request, okay? And once they approve that request, okay, at that point in time, then you can move forward. Let me just approve this real quick. Authorize. Sorry, I'm working on another system right here to do the authorization for that request. so I can show you how it comes back. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so that's working there. Okay, so if you wanted to see stuff that was requested, if I go into search disposition request, okay, I can actually pull up. There is a status here. I want to look at the stuff that's submitted, right? So I can go to submitted and hit search, and that'll bring up all the requests that I've submitted. So if I wanted to view that, I can go in and view that. We are working on a change. It's not going to be for next week. It'll probably be in the next release that we do. We are going to add a submitted status to this inbox so you can actually see the items that are kind of in between the stuff that's been ready for submission and authorized. It's going to say, you know, submitted status, so you can actually a quick link to pull up the submitted stuff. But for right now, you can go into search disposition request, and you can actually add that, you know, or you can certify that particular status. Okay. Okay. So I've just now approved this request that I've submitted. Let me just close this. Okay. And let me refresh this screen here. Now we'll notice in the dashboard, when I refresh the screen, we should see authorized request 1. Okay. Just give me a second. And I apologize for running over today. I kind of covered a lot more, a little bit more in depth, and we had a little bit more questions than normal coming in today. So I'm just waiting for this to come up. While I'm doing that, let me look at any other questions I have. Do you get an email telling you your request is approved? You know, that is a good question, Marie. I don't remember. I deal with so many different systems, and we do emails in so many different systems. I believe you do. But I'd have to double check my email. So let me just log in there while this is coming up. Okay, so now once you log back in, you'll notice under disposition request authorized, it says 1. Okay, so my request has been authorized. Let me jump over here. I will need to get information because I don't see that coming up right now, the email. But it's not to say it doesn't. I'll have to just double check on that, that request. But here we go. Now, typically, your authorizations are typically going to be within 2 to 3 days. Okay, now I know typically that might sound strange because with the paper forms, I know it's been a lot longer. I will let you know that with electronic dispositions, the state, 2 things, can actually process electronic dispositions a lot quicker, and electronic disposition requests take priority over the paper requests, so those are the ones that they process first. So typically, once you submit your request, within typically 2 to 3 days, that request is either going to be authorized or rejected. So you could check over the next day or 2 after you submit. It could even be same day. If it's not a busy time of the year, it could even be same day. I do know that for counties and municipalities, because most of them submit stuff in January, February. I mean, there's times that the queue for requests that have been in there could be over 500, okay, pending. Remember, they have to look at each line. So there it could be somewhat of a delay. But if you guys submit most of your stuff mid-year, I would say that typically within a couple of days, you're going to have some type of answer. So now let me click on the authorization link here, right? There's a couple of things we need to do, right? So when we go into this request, when I click on that link and I open up this request, the one thing I'm going to recommend that you do, okay, the first thing you do is that when you open this request is look at each individual line item and check the status of each line item. And the reason for that is with the electronic system, the state can do what they call conditional authorization, which means that they can authorize some lines and they can reject others, right? And if we look at this status column here, in this case, fortunately, all my stuff was authorized, right? There was nothing that was rejected, but if something is rejected, you would see reject here. So don't assume that because your whole disposition request has a status of authorized, that every line item on that request is authorized. Always double check to make sure each line item is authorized, okay? So at this point in time, what you'll see down here is you'll see my authorization number, okay? And you'll see the date that it was authorized. At this point in time, I can now go forward and I can now dispose of my records, right? So however you dispose of your records, whether you shred them, whether you recycle them, whether you incinerate them, whatever, you go ahead and you do your, you do your normal process of disposing of those records. But once you're done, there's one final step that you need to do in the system, and that's what they call update disposition status. Now, for the people who've been doing the paper form, you do realize, again, and I find people who still never knew they had to do this, but Once you dispose of the records, on the paper form, in the lower right-hand corner of that form, there was a section where you would fill in when you dispose of them, how you dispose of that record, and you would send that last copy of that 4-part form back to the state to let them know that those records have been disposed. Technically, until you do that process and notify the state that the records have been disposed and when they were disposed, they aren't, in the state's eyes, been disposed of yet. Even though you might have shredded them 3 years ago, if you never informed the state that they were disposed of, according to the state, you still have those records, okay? But what we've done here in the system is we have done this so you can do it electronically, right? And so once you come in here and you look at all your line items, you've disposed of your records, the final step you need to do here is click on this button that says Update Disposition Status, okay? This is where you need to use your PIN number, right? So I'm going to put in the PIN number I picked when I first registered. I'm going to click on Authenticate. And at this point in time, what you're going to do is you're going to have a little box that comes up, okay? It's going to have your name there, right? Because you're logged into the system. But it's also going to list destruction methods and the date that you dispose of those records. So let's say I dispose of this record today. Well, obviously it defaults to today's date. But let's say it was yesterday. I need to change this then to the 27th. And then for your destruction and disposition method, I need to pick how to destroy it, right? Shred is the default, right? Because that's the most common way that most people destroy records. But there's other things you can pick from those as well, too. And the other thing is, if you pick other, right, you need to put a comment in of how you dispose of that, right? So I do know, like, as a matter of fact, we're using Camden County, Cherry Hill. For municipalities down in Camden County, they actually take their records to the county incinerator, and they have an incinerator. And the incinerator actually gives them a certificate that they've been disposed of through the incineration process. So again, you can put in there other and put incinerator, however. But once you put in that request, right, let me just pick shred, okay, and click on save. Once you hit save here, this now completes the entire process. Okay, you're now done, okay? And you'll notice on here at the very bottom with the final disposition status, it says shred, tells me the date of my name and the date that I did it, okay? Now this request is totally done, okay? It's complete, it's done, I don't have to do anything else with this request. Now, you can print out this request if you want and keep for your records. You don't have to. Again, I mentioned earlier about creating more paper for yourself. This request with all the signatures on it will always be in the system, right? You can always come back in here and do a search, because if you get an open request or something like that, and people want to check, well, did you have authorization to dispose of these records and so on and so forth, you can always come back into the system. You can always print out a hard copy for that person to prove that you had authorization and were able to dispose of it. We do print a summary sheet, or we attach a summary sheet to the request, just so you have it, you know, that everything was authorized. And then here's your original disposition request here, okay? And I know it's a little hard to see, but at the bottom we annotate the authorization date and the authorization number, and also the destruction date and the destruction method at the bottom of that form. So if you ever print this out for anybody to prove to them that you had authorization to dispose of that record, you can print that out with all that information annotated at the bottom and give them as a complete authorization record. When you're done, you go back out to the home screen. Again, you'll notice that in my inbox, my disposition request authorized is now back to 0 because I completed the entire process. There's nothing pending, okay? And I'm done. That was it. Now I can go on now, create a new request, and go through the entire process again for my next request, okay? So again, I know we ran over a little bit. I'm going to stay on as long as need be to answer any additional questions. There are some additional webinars coming up as well, too, that I know there's room in it. Today's obviously was full. We actually had 100 people sign up for today's webinar, which is the capacity. But there are some additional coming up that there is room for. So if there's anybody else in your organization that needs to attend, feel free to do that. Like I said, you will get an email eventually from the state letting you know when those videos or this webinar is posted online. I will try to do this hopefully by the end of this week to get at least days up there. I have to go through some stuff to get it posted, but I'll try to do that by the end of the week. So let me go back to final questions here. And again, if you have any final questions, feel free to type in your question and I will answer it. I will put in my email here in a second, so everybody has that in case they need to contact me directly. Let me do that first real quick. Let me just put my email address in there. Put my name, So I got my name and my email address there. Okay, so let me go through these final questions here real quick, and in case I have to go over to anything else real quick. Okay, so Marie, do you get an, okay, Marie, I'll get back to you on the email question. I'll have to check on that. Let's see. Just as a comment here. Okay. If we have multiple users, will someone else have to access the request I'm working on, or will someone else have to? Kimberly, I think you meant, can somebody access the request that you're working on? Yeah, absolutely. So if you started a request and then somebody else has to finish it or add to it or whatever, then they, as long as they're a user on the system, then yes, they will be able to get to that request and either add or delete or edit that request as well too. So I hope that answers your question. Scott, who was online, who's left, I have to get off the line. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Marie, if someone other than the person who entered the request wants to check status, can other users pull them up? Yes. Again, any user that's registered on the system can pull up all those requests. So again, yes, other than yourself, other people can check the status of those requests. Barbara asked, I think I might have missed a step. At the very end, if you enter your PIN and authenticate, enter the date disclosed and the method. What do you click on next? You click on the save button, Barbara. Okay, so after you enter the date that you dispose of the record and the destruction method, you will click on the save button, and now that will save that information that you just entered. So that at that point in time, we'll complete the request. Janet asked, just to reiterate, we can register and start using the system once approved by the state next week. Yes. Okay. So once next week comes, like I said, Janet, I'll tell you this for everybody who's still on the line. If you're a typical Board of Ed at a typical municipality, you're not what I call one of the special type of entities like vocational schools, county college, charter school, or other separate type of Board of Ed. Technically, you could register today and start using the system. It's just I wanted to say next week for the people who aren't ready or set up yet in the system that if they go in today and try to register for your vocational school, unfortunately, you won't be able to do that today because the system isn't quite ready yet for you. So if you're a typical organization, then absolutely you could technically go in today and start registering. Okay, very good. I think that's all the questions that have come in. I will stay on the line for another few minutes, couple of minutes. I know, and again, I apologize that we went over today. We did have more questions than usual, and I did go in depth in a little bit more of the items that we dealt with. But again, I hope that by me going into a little bit more in depth, it gives you a better understanding of the system and will help you utilize the system a little bit better. Amy, for my contact number, just do me a favor, email me first, and then I will send out contact number. I generally don't send out my contact number in a broadcast just because I don't want hundreds of people calling me. Again, I mentioned typically first point of contact should be the state, but if you email me directly and need to talk to me about certain things, just send me an email to that email address that I posted, and then I'll contact you from there, and we can go from there. So hope that answers that. Good. Going through here. Let me post, okay. In the chat section, Deborah, you should see my email. If you go into your panel in the chat section, if you scroll down, you should see my email there. But real quick, I will give it out over the phone. My email address is mark, M-A-R-K, at sunrise, S-Y-S, short for system.com. So mark at sunrisesys.com. But like I said, if you look in the panel and you look in the chat section, you might have to scroll down to go through all the messages. You should see my email there as well. So you know what? I think I can actually respond here. I'm going to send that. Do it one more time. Okay, next question. If multiple users can access, I would not want someone to delete something I have added. Any way to prevent that? As of right now, Shelley, no. Unfortunately, if you have access, if your user set up, they can, unfortunately accidentally delete something. That's why I recommend that the users that you do set up are trusted users. Can somebody always accidentally delete something, even yourself? Absolutely. We always give a warning message. If you hit the delete button, we always give a pop-up message that says, are you sure you want to delete this item or this request? Again, we don't just automatically delete it. There is a warning that comes up, and if somebody actually goes past that and enters it again or clicks OK, then yeah, obviously it'll be deleted. But unfortunately, at this point in time, just make sure that everybody's aware that they are accessing other people's work. And again, your particular organization, I don't know how your organization is structured. Shelley, if you want to send me an email, I could send you my number. We can have a conversation. There could be another way we can get around that, especially if people only manage certain schedules within the organization. Then yes, we might be able to get around that. But like I said, if you want more information, you want to talk, just email me with your contact information, and we can talk a little bit further. What is the website for the system to register? In that information that I posted in the handout section, the website address is there. It's a little bit long, but I can post it. If you give me 1 second here. Let me go favorites, Artemis. I will post that here real quick. Okay, so there, I posted there, Jennifer. You should have that in the answer section of the chat. Okay, good. So those are all the questions so far. Again, I'll stay on a few more minutes. If anybody else has any other questions, I'll answer those questions. But I want to thank everybody for joining today. I think once you get into the system, I know in the beginning there's a learning curve, so there might be a little bit of frustration learning all the steps. We try to make the system as user-friendly as possible. But by all means, if you run into any issues, like I said, call the state first. But again, if you contact me first, I will not ignore you. I will answer your questions and help you out. This benefits everybody. This benefits you as the user, benefits the state to process your request quicker, benefits us as Sunrise to make sure people are utilizing the system. We do tend to take comments for future enhancements from time to time. Again, unfortunately, this is the state system, and any enhancements are something that would have to be approved by them. But again, like I said, we do take under comments or from time to time enhancement requests to make the system better. One thing I did not mention earlier, because I don't want to promise anybody anything yet, is that at some point later this year, the whole process of printing out the disposition form and getting the wet signatures is most likely going to go away. We're going to introduce electronic signatures. So this will become a 100% paperless system. But at this point in time, we don't have a date yet for that. It might be fourth quarter of this year. So again, I don't want to promise anything yet because we don't, we're in the early development stages. But this will be something that eventually will be a totally 100% paperless system, utilizing electronic signatures, even for your auditors as well too, to sign off on those requests. So again, that will be coming sometime, like I said, probably fourth quarter of this year. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in, so I'm going to give it about 1 more minute, and then I'm going to end this broadcast for today. So again, thanks everybody for attending today. If you need any additional help, like I said, there are some additional webinars coming up that have some room. If you have any other people in your organization that needs to attend, feel free to have them sign up. And like I said, I will try to get this YouTube video posted of this webinar as quickly as possible, and we'll get that link out there. So again, thank you everybody, and have a great day.